Hello, everyone. I'm Joe,
And I'm Alex.
and this is Hungover Politics, the show where we get drunk and talk about the topics of the day, except neither of us is inebriated today.
It's very unfortunate. Why is this?
Because we have to leave after we record this to go deal with a wasp nest. However,
A wasp?
the podcast comes first. So, today's issues are the funeral of, uh, what the fuck is his name? John Lewis?
Yes.
I have hated this man for a decade, and today I can't remember his name. My God.
Yes.
And it,
Why do you hate it?
just to make sure I can remember anything at all, Hank Johnson is the man who said that Guam would tip over, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so I can't remember his name.
If you put too many military installations.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Guam.
If we just put like one too many gay Navy sailors on Guam, the entire island will simply capsize.
We really need to work on the Navy's rebranding. Because the Navy has a pretty badass past. Especially its founding. But it just has this ongoing reputation
Well,
being
look.
the home of the gays.
Well, look. That ongoing reputation predates the American Navy by many, many years.
Oh, really? Okay, never mind.
Yeah, this is a stereotype going back to like the British Empire, probably earlier than that. But I just know it goes back at least that far. So the Navy has always been the home of the gays. The reason being is that the Navy often spent a long time away from home, and women weren't allowed on ships. And so, people do what they got to do to get off. And
Right.
suddenly everyone comes home and they're super gay. So this has been a problem for a long time. But yes, John Paul Jones is great, and we should remember him more fondly.
Yes.
In fact, when we try to, actually have good relations with Russia, all we should do is we should have like a joint Russian-American John Paul Jones celebration. Because when he retired from the American Navy, he went over and fought for the Russian Empire, as I believe an admiral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's
What a dude.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll talk about John Lewis's funeral and why your grandma is not nearly as important as the civil rights icon who hates your civil rights. Well, hated, I guess. He's dead now. Thank God. And then we will cover the other pressing issue of the day, which is Politico's ability to have technical errors that amount to a time machine.
Wow.
Yeah. So a couple of days ago, they managed to see very clearly into the future in a way that really shouldn't be possible. I mean, not without an insane amount of collusion. Interesting that. And Politico is scrambling to justify how they saw into the future so clearly. And I mean, between tomorrow and the 17th, we will know whether this was really a technical error or whether there was collusion between Politico and the Biden campaign.
So, quick question. So, are you insinuating they are not, in fact, clairvoyant?
They could be. They could be clairvoyant, but I know Politico has run a lot of bullshit stories, and I feel like a team of clairvoyants would not be so successful at not predicting the future.
So, I mean, did they have the wrong crystals?
That's possible. Maybe they are seeing into alternate universes.
Yeah, that's probably it. I mean, look, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, this is the precious holders of democracy themselves, the media.
Yeah, and you're not wrong. So, onto the political story.
Oh yes.
So Politico on, when was this? The 28th, so 3 days ago, accidentally managed to update their page on Biden's VP pick to Biden's VP pick, Kamala Harris, senator from California. Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris to become his running mate for the 2020 election on August 1st. For those of you watching at home, today is July 31st, and this story broke 3 days ago. August 1st is tomorrow. 2 weeks before the Democratic National Convention, after keeping his choice close to the chest for months. In his announcement, Biden called Harris a worthy opponent and a worthy running mate, alluding to the pair's rivalry during the earlier stages of the Democratic primary. She will bring her experience as a prosecutor, household name recognition, and skill as a debater to the ticket. Now, initially, when I hear that, a magazine or a newspaper has, said that something will happen, such as this candidate will be picked for this position, generally my first thought is, they pre-bake these articles all the time. And they just kind of fill in the blanks, and boom, you have your article. So, for instance, Time Magazine had a cover ready for if Hillary Clinton became president or if Donald Trump did. And they kind of had to print these things in advance, or at least have them ready to go the second the election was decided. And that's kind of what we're looking at here, or at least that's what I would have thought. Except for the direct quote from Biden that has not happened yet. Which tells me that, maybe they just put in a random quote. Maybe they made this up and they were going to fill it in with something later. But you'd think they would have filled it in with, I don't know, insert quote here. Instead of, very specifically, Biden called Harris a worthy opponent and a worthy running mate. Which that seems like an interesting placeholder quote. At least if you don't know what the quote is going to be when the announcement is made. So, yeah, it looks an awful lot like collusion to me. And actually to a lot of people. But okay. So Politico has been kind of scrambling to come up with an excuse for this. So first they said it was a technical error that the page is published at all. In fact, if you look at the actual article, and you scroll down to the bottom, it says, Editor's Note, an earlier version of this graphic was mistakenly reported that Biden had made his VP selection. We regret this mistake. Which is interesting enough already. And then Politico jumps in with, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me anymore, but they said, what was it? Oh, fuck.
You don't remember what they said?
I literally forgot it as I was going to say it.
It's unfortunate.
What was their other excuse here? I mean, it's clearly not that they're clairvoyant. Now I'm going to have to see if I can fucking find it.
Once again, providing as much professionalism in our podcast as humanly possible. But honestly, you're watching a podcast in which you were presuming that we would be drunk. So the standards are set pretty low anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Just assume that I'm actually drunk right now. You wouldn't even know the difference.
Exactly. And assume that I would be drunk if I could drink. Fortunately, there are more than one way to get intoxicated.
Oh man, time to scroll through my browser history.
Keep that in mind.
Here it is. Let it load. Oh, interestingly enough, Kamala Harris said that she believed Joe Biden's accusers. So if she accepts this position, then we officially cannot believe women.
So, wait, hold on.
Oh, here it is. So,
what do you mean she said that she believes his accusers?
I remember when that one chick was like, Biden raped me?
Yeah.
And then several more were like, Biden raped me?
Right.
And the media did a really good job of pretending that no one ever said that.
Right.
And, Believe All Women was immediately called into question. When the second these women came forward, they were like, well, we didn't mean women who aren't on our side, of course.
Right.
Okay, so the other excuse they used was that it was placeholder text that was accidentally published.
Ah, yes, a certain lorem ipsum.
Yeah. So They said that our standard practice is to use lorem ipsum as placeholder text. In this instance, that didn't happen. We regret the error and any confusion that it caused. So your standard practice is to use lorem ipsum for your pre-writes. But all of a sudden you have a pre-write that is not only gibberish, or not gibberish, but it is very clear about who Biden's VP pick will be, what he will say when he announces this pick, and when he will say it. So, Politico, I really just want you to admit that this was you working with the Biden campaign. I mean, we'll know for sure in a couple of days. But it looks an awful lot to me like they have someone on the inside of the Biden campaign. And I know they can't admit that because it would destroy their credibility, but at this point in time, lying about it also kind of destroys your credibility. Because, I mean, honestly, even if they're telling the truth, it destroys their credibility. Because then they go from, you know, we're not only so bad at telling the truth that it sounds like a lie, but they're so incompetent that they manage to fuck up in two major ways on the same thing. To the degree where it looks like they're just covering it up.
Right.
Alright, and then on to our other story. The good representative, or senator, I think he was a representative, John Lewis, known for marching alongside MLK and desperately wanting nothing more than to use marching alongside MLK as justification to confiscate firearms from American citizens. Which is why I hate the man, because he like, I'm not sure how many other people saw this, but every time the Democrats would go into Congress and they would sit on the floor and they would cry because, you know, there had been another shooting in America and we just need gun control, John Lewis would be there. And John Lewis would always say, I marched alongside MLK and I am a civil rights icon and everyone knows me as the civil rights icon. So it is only fitting that I, the civil rights icon who marched alongside MLK, would personally demand that the government violate your civil rights. And I can't, yeah, exactly. So, having guns is apparently not a civil right, despite being in the Constitution.
No.
But you know what? He did march alongside MLK, so he is basically the expert on this matter.
We definitely wouldn't want to, enact stricter gun control in the cities, especially in lower income areas, because as a black civil rights icon, my first prerogative is to make sure that these black men in the cities don't get uppity. Because if they get uppity, then my master will be pretty upset.
Yeah.
And he won't feed me the chocolate cake, or at least the crumbs that he has after dinner. Right. And I love their chocolate cake. Martha makes a very good chocolate cake.
Right. So the king of civil rights would more than happily violate the civil rights of the very people that he fought for the civil rights of, allegedly, at one point in time, in order to make a political point, which just so happens to completely fit with what the Democrats would desire. I don't know how that would happen. And at the same time, the
how old is John Lewis?
Old.
Can we find out when he switched positions from Republican to Democrat?
That's a good question.
Now,
political party Democratic. Interestingly enough, there's no Republican until the Civil Rights Act was signed, and then he became a Democrat. Now that is interesting.
So he was a Republican.
No, he was never a Republican.
That's so strange.
I know the party switched.
The party switched, man. The party they switcherooed. They played Uno and they got the Uno reverso card. Okay? That's really makes you think. You know, really gets that noggin a jogging, jogging down a forested path. But I wonder why he didn't switch. So, are you saying that in his childhood he also believed in like eugenics-based genocide?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, he was quite young when he marched with them. Okay, he was only about 20.
Okay, cool.
So it's hard to say whether he was an active member of the Democratic Party at the time. However, when
Right.
he first ran for Congress in the 80s, he was already firmly a Democrat. And there's nothing about him ever supporting the Republican Party in any way at any time prior to that. Let's look at personal life. Oh, he had no personal life. His Wikipedia article: Personal Life and Death. Lewis met Lillian Miles at a New Year's Eve party hosted by Zernona Clayton. They married in 1968. Together, they had one son named John Miles Lewis. Lillian died on December 31st, 2012. On December 29th, 2019, Lewis announced that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He remained in the Washington, D.C. area for his treatment. Lewis stated, "I have been in some kind of fight for freedom, equality, basic human rights for nearly my entire life. I have never faced a fight quite like the one I have now." Well, you weren't a very good fighter. Look, I think this is an example of a man who was at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look, if he had been a Black Panther, you think the Black Panthers were in favor of gun control?
I don't think so. I think, in fact, they all got killed and spooked because of how against gun control they were.
Yeah.
They were really spooking out the CIA.
Yeah. And then you have, the modern equivalent would kind of be this not fucking around coalition, and they are all waving around very impressive rifles. So once again, it seems like black civil rights organizations, especially the more die-hard ones, are very pro-gun. Because, it kind of makes sense from their perspective. If they're being so fucked with by society, then why wouldn't they want to be able to defend themselves? And yet John Lewis, the civil rights icon, the man who stood up for black people in an era where they were fully and truly oppressed, no, we don't need guns. What's the point? Nothing bad could ever happen. The government is good. The government has never done anything bad. Remember very clearly where I was 40 years ago. But then completely ignore the context and who it was that was fucking with me 40 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah. Let's see. But his funeral, public ceremonies honoring Lewis began in his hometown of Troy, Alabama at Troy University, where he had been denied admission due to racial segregation. Oh, that's unfortunate.
That's weird.
So then they lied in state, or he lied in state, for 2 days. Let's see. Oh, but his body was displayed outside instead of inside.
Ooh,
Yeah, because of COVID.
spicy.
Lying instead at the Capitol, however, you do see a whole lot of congressmen who are not maintaining 6 feet of separation between each other.
That's not good.
I mean, some of them are. Most of them are not.
That's pretty scary, man.
I think the biggest distance between two people who are adjacent to each other is Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi, who are standing what appears to be approximately 6 to 8 feet apart.
I think they are personally aggressing against my grandmother.
Yeah, they're in fact trying to kill your grandma. But more importantly, they seem to be trying to kill all of Congress. Because after all, If my grandma dies and she gets a funeral, no one would be allowed to attend, even with social distancing measures, because that would be horrible, and it would kill my dead grandma.
Again.
Again, yeah, she would wake up from the dead, get COVID, and then die.
Amazing.
Let's see, what else do we know about this? His internment followed the service at Atlanta's historic Southview Cemetery. Oh, Donald Trump didn't show up. Neither did Jimmy Carter. That's unfortunate. That's probably because Jimmy Carter is a Democrat from the South from the 60s. And, he hasn't learned to shut up about their actual beliefs yet. Actually, I'm sure he has, but that doesn't mean he wants to be anywhere near a whole bunch of black people. That would be really unfortunate for him and truly terrifying, really.
I mean, the man would be under threat. What if they wanted gun rights?
Well, right. And, I mean, Jimmy Carter is a very old man. Let's see, what else is there in the news? Wait, what? Okay, that's a story. The
Explain.
Boston Marathon bomber, Dzhokhar Zarnev's death sentence tossed out by appeals court.
The Boston...
The Boston Marathon bomber.
Oh!
Oh, okay. So it's not out forever. The first U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals of Boston upheld much of Zarnev's conviction, but ordered a lower court judge to hold a new trial strictly over what sentence Zarnev should receive for the death penalty eligible crimes he was convicted of. Why?
Because there is no justice. Justice is an imaginary concept. And now that we live in a
God, can you imagine finding a new jury for this case?
Society. Oh yeah, so unbiased.
Yeah, and that's why the conviction was in fact overthrown. So, U.S. Circuit Judge Rajiri Thompson, writing for the court, said the trial judge fell short in conducting the jury selection process and ensuring it could winnow out partial jurors exposed to pretrial publicity surrounding the high-profile case. Thompson said the pervasive news coverage of the bombings and their aftermath featured bone-chilling photos and videos of Zarnev, now 27, and his brother carrying backpacks at the marathon, and of those injured and killed near its finish line. The trial judge allowed his jury to include jurors who had already formed an opinion that Dzhokhar was guilty, and he did so in large part because they answered yes to the question whether they could decide this high-profile case based on the evidence. Thompson stressed the limits of the court's ruling. Make no mistake, Dzhokhar will spend his remaining days locked up in prison, with the only matter remaining being whether he will die by execution. Okay, this is super backwards. Like Alex. Okay, so if the jury is too partial to determine whether or not he should get a death sentence, then are they not also too partial to decide whether the man is guilty?
Correct.
Some of the jurors had already decided the man was guilty. So that whole, how can that conviction stand? That should call for an entirely new trial.
Yeah.
Then again, this circuit court judge is probably worried that he would wind up dead if he were to release the Boston Marathon bombers.
Oh, you know, that event that caused martial law to be enacted in Boston?
Yeah. I'm sure that went over well, and he would be really popular if those guys were just, hey, you get a new trial, everything is fine and dandy.
We'll just get all our jury will be of those Those people in the what you call it, that island off of India.
Oh yeah,
Who,
yeah,
like, that
yeah,
hasn't touched civilization.
yeah, the one that throws spears and launches arrows at planes and helicopters and boats that come near them.
To be fair, they probably don't have COVID.
You're probably correct. It would be funny if they're all dead because of COVID.
That would also be quite interesting.
Let's see. Oh, Biden is winning in the polls, so prepare for President Biden, because the polls have never, ever been wrong. Especially not with Trump running for president.
In polls, we do trust.
Oh, you know what? I want to know what Obama said at John Lewis's funeral. What the fuck? So former President Obama used the funeral as a good opportunity to campaign for his political positions. So Alex, um,
Yes.
should you die before me, which is quite frankly likely, um, uh, and if I were to give your eulogy, am I permitted to just go out there and say Alex was a good man, who would have wanted us to repeal the National Firearms Act, who would have wanted us to abolish the income tax, and who, in every regard, would have just wanted all of you in Congress to be dead right now? Am I allowed to make that your eulogy?
I mean, I don't know what kind of point you're trying to make that we shouldn't do this, because I would be more than happy
Okay.
if you did that at my funeral.
That's fair. So,
Honestly, if you invited all of Congress to my funeral, and let's just say there were a couple armed men, and we went firing squad time in the game of Minecraft, in the Sims, if we held my funeral in the Sims and invited the Sims version of Congress, and in my eulogy, you just whisper, he also wanted Congress all to be dead, and then you pulled out an AR, and you just started painting the place red.
right.
I think I would be rolling in my grave, not out of disgust, but out of knowing that today's the day that we bring unlimited energy to the world.
Right. Okay, so unfortunately, I can't read you his entire speech. I'm halfway tempted to play the entire speech, but also the entire speech is 40 minutes.
Wow.
So unfortunately, I don't think that's gonna be a thing. But the readout, I'm not really sure what that is. Oh, it's Joy Reid. So she's naturally going to take out the parts that she thinks are best, because this is MSNBC. So she quoted Obama as saying, "If all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do."
Wait, what?
Barack Obama calls for automatic voter registration, statehood for D.C., and Puerto Rico.
Wait, the filibuster. Whoa. The filibuster is a Jim Crow relic?
That's possible. It did come around about that time.
I wonder who did. This really makes you think. Really
Let's see.
gets that noggin a jog.
Okay, so the filibuster is definitely not a Jim Crow era relic.
Didn't think so.
So the ability to block a measure through extended debate was an inadvertent side effect of an 1806 rule change. Which is probably why in American government class we teach about the filibuster as if it was just written into the Constitution. Because it's all of 10, 15, 16, 17 years younger than the Constitution.
Right.
Let's see. In 1970, the Senate adopted a two-track procedure to prevent filibusters from stopping all other Senate business. Let's see. Huh. So there is a connection. So we'll just read into 1949 and onwards from the Wikipedia article on the filibuster. In 1949, the Senate made invoking cloture more difficult by requiring 2/3 of the entire Senate membership to vote in favor of a cloture motion. Moreover, future proposals to change the Senate rules were themselves specifically exempted from being subject to cloture. In 1953, Senator Wayne Morse of Oregon set a record by filibustering for 22 hours and 26 minutes while protesting the Tidelands oil legislation. Then Democratic Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina broke this record in 1957. Oh, Strom Thurmond, wow. In 1957 by filibustering the Civil Rights Act of 1957 for 24 hours and 18 minutes, although the bill ultimately passed.
Oh no.
I feel like this is the one guy who actually switched parties. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, he switched parties after the Civil Rights Act. This is literally the guy who backs up the party switch myth. Because there was one. Actually, I think there were like three. But, 3 out of the entire House and Senate switched parties. It's ridiculous. In 1959, anticipating more civil rights legislation, the Senate, under the leadership of Majority Leader, you want to guess who this one is? This one didn't switch parties.
No, I have no clue.
No clue who this Majority Leader would be?
Oh.
He was president of the United States.
Jimmy Carter.
No, but he is a senator from, I believe, Texas at this time.
Ooh.
It wouldn't be long before he became president.
George Bush.
No. Lyndon Johnson. Restored the cloture threshold to 2/3 of those voting.
I just wanted to say George.
I know.
Is he even from Texas? I think his son is from Texas, but is George Bush Sr. from Texas?
I don't believe so.
But Lyndon Johnson. Wow, he really did not want them to have rights.
Yeah. So Lyndon Johnson, wow. Democratic president and senator from Texas, is the one who really most closely associates the filibuster in its modern incarnation with Jim Crow. Interesting. Although the 1949 rule had eliminated cloture on rules changes themselves, Johnson acted at the very beginning of the new Congress on January 5th, 1959, and the resolution was adopted by a 72-22 vote, with the support of 3 top Democrats and 3 of the 4 top Republicans. The presiding officer, Vice President Richard Nixon, supported the move and stated his opinion that the Senate had a constitutional right at the beginning of each new Congress to determine rules it desires to follow. The 1959 change also eliminated the 1949 exemption for rules changes, allowing cloture to once again be invoked on future changes. One of the most notable filibusters of the 1960s occurred when Southern Democrats attempted to block the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by filibustering for 75 hours straight, including
Are we sure there was not Are you sure? Are we sure there was no Northern Democrats
I mean,
involved in this? Because
I
I just find it kind of pernicious that they're saying Southern Democrats
okay.
when I
Look,
think we all know that everyone kind of stood lockstep with the party line.
okay, look. How are we defining North and South here? Because I can answer your question really quickly. In fact, here, let me just continue reading, and I'll stop, and I'll see if you can figure out how this question
Okay.
gets answered.
Okay.
By filibustering for 75 hours, including a 14-hour and 13-minute address by Senator of
Johnson?
no. This is
No.
Johnson is already vice president or president at this point in time. In fact, I believe he's president at this point. It's another famously racist Democrat
Senator
from a state that is ambiguously
Clinton
northern
of
or southern.
Arkansas.
No,
No.
it's a state that straddles the border.
Texas.
Not the border with Mexico. A state that straddles the border between north and south.
Missouri.
No.
Missouri.
A famous senator. You know this man by name. I promise you.
I don't know.
He could fly away through the power of his name alone.
Frank Sinatra.
No. Robert Byrd of West Virginia.
Robert Byrd. No.
So, is West Virginia a northern or a southern state?
It's a northern state.
I mean, if we're using the Civil War definition, hell yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it expressly exists because it wanted to join the Union.
Yeah, exactly. It did not want to be a slave state. Let's see. Now, interestingly enough, if we're using the Mason-Dixon as our definition, West Virginia is almost entirely below that line. Although there is a little tiny piece that just like shoots way north.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's complicated. Which is why I said it's ambiguously northern or southern.
Right.
So yeah, we basically have that. So Obama's association of the filibuster with Jim Crow is interesting in the fact that it neglects to mention who it was who associated the filibuster with Jim Crow. Although again, the filibuster pre-existed Jim Crow by like 150 years. Well, not quite 150, like 130 years.
Right.
I want to find a transcript. I just want to find the juicy bits. Because just judging by that, and the fact that he wants to make D.C. and Puerto Rico a state, which again, this is the... So at your funeral, when I say, when we make Canada the 51st state, you're okay with that being in the eulogy?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, it is something I believe. I mean, you are just enforcing my legacy.
You're not wrong. No, I'm not going to create a New York Times account to read this fucking transcript. I just want to read the transcript.
I mean, people may say it's in poor taste. And I have a feeling that him making a bunch of political points you were trying to say may have been in poor taste. However, I honestly, personally, am going just completely against your narrative and your point.
Yes.
Because I would be very happy.
Okay. But what if it was things that you didn't even...
Oh, if I didn't believe... Well, then why have you been saying things that I actually believe?
Right, okay. So...
You messed up in your point.
Right. Well, I don't know Lewis's opinion on DC and Puerto Rico becoming states.
Correct. But look, if you were to say in my eulogy, Alex, a Latino man, he would have wanted
Open borders.
amnesty. He would have wanted amnesty for they don't say open borders because, you know, if Mexico is part of the United States, I would want the borders to be open.
Well, that's very true.
That's so it's conditional. It's conditional.
Right,
But,
right.
You know, just like any other state has free travel between the states.
Okay, so
But if it was like, he would have wanted amnesty for all his Latino brethren, then I would be rolling in my grave, this time out of disgust.
Alex, how good is your Obama impression?
Not very good.
It's better than mine.
Especially in a on a microphone.
Right. So it's
or
better
call.
than mine, and I've already done a lot of reading. So this one is your turn.
Okay, you wanna send it to me?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. let me look. Yes, I do want to go there.
This isn't a full transcript, but this is like CNN's highlights of it.
Where do you want me to start reading?
Just read everything in quotations. So like the second paragraph is where it starts.
Today we witness, with our own eyes, police officer... Wait, wrong. Hold on. Wrong accent.
Just a little bit.
Today we witness with our own eyes...
No, that's Jordan Peterson.
Shit. I just don't know if I can do Obama. I just have to, have to embrace race baiting. I am a race baiter. I want all Latinos to rise up. La Raza. La Raza.
Yes.
Today we witness, with our own eyes, police officers kneeling on the necks of black Americans. George Wallace may be gone, but we can witness our federal government sending agents to use tear gas and batons against peaceful demonstrators. I know this is a celebration of John's life. He's like, I know this is completely off topic.
Yeah, I know I spent the first, sentence of my eulogy not mentioning the man.
There are some who might say we shouldn't dwell on such things. But why miss an opportunity to race bait? I'm sorry. Wait a second. That's not what he said. He said, but that's why I'm not talking about. Or that's why I'm talking about. John Lewis devoted his time on Earth fighting the very attacks on democracy and what's best in America that we are seeing circulate right now. Gluckety gluck. Gluckety gluck. Oh, hold on. Okay. Once we pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, we should keep marching to make it even better.
Wait, I love CNN's commentary here. Obama said before listing several policy proposals to expand voting access. I wonder why CNN doesn't want to mention what those are. Oh, here's my favorite quote. Here, I'll play narrator between your quotes.
No, are you looking at the founding father one?
No, that paragraph continues with a quote.
Okay.
Like at the end of the second line, it goes back to the quote.
I think I should read this.
Okay.
And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster another Jim Crow relic in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do. Doobly-doo. Bluckety-buck.
He called John Lewis a founding father.
Well, yeah, it's their attempt to replace all the founding fathers.
Yeah.
Or to minimize what being a founding father is.
Well, yeah, I mean, John Lewis never owned slaves, so I guess I can just forgive the fact that, he wants to strip American citizens of their rights. It's
Correct.
fine. I guess.
He's like John Paul Jones, okay? He pirated ships and burnt towns.
Yeah.
Including Whitehaven. In Britain.
Wasn't that
who
in
now
Ireland?
honors his memory. What?
So wasn't that in Ireland?
It was somewhere. No, I think it was in Britain. It could have been in Ireland.
Yeah.
Either way, they celebrate his memory, and
right.
I think they have posthumously, pardoned him for all the crimes he committed in that town.
Yeah.
Very
great.
fun.
Bush remembered Lewis as an American saint.
Okay. So, like the Catholic Church, we are now redefining what saints are.
Yeah. Apparently, he's being canonized by the former president.
Beautiful. Wow.
Wait, so let's see. Yeah, okay, so the service, which is called the Celebration of Life by the Lewis family, was a private event because of the coronavirus pandemic, and attendees were required to wear face masks, but they were not required to keep 6 feet apart.
I see.
Jimmy Carter did not attend the service. Yeah, we already know that. Holy shit, is Carter really that old?
How old is Carter?
95.
Holy shit.
I thought he was in, like, his 80s.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I guess he was president a long fucking time ago. 50 years ago? Yeah?
Oh, Jimmy Carter's doing pretty good for himself.
Well, I mean, didn't he recently get brain cancer?
He's 95.
That's fair.
I mean,
That's
getting brain cancer at 95 is like... Yeah, okay, it was a good run.
That's very fair.
You know?
Let's see. Yeah, I just don't get why everyone is so, like, John Lewis is amazing. There are plenty of civil rights icons to like. John Lewis is just not one of them. At all. Like, he did good during the civil rights era, and then he just immediately went to shit. And I mean, if we can cancel someone for a tweet from 20 years ago, then can we cancel someone for getting progressively worse over time?
No.
No? Okay, so one good thing 20 years ago redeems you for the modern era. But, like, one bad thing 20 years ago ruins everything that you achieve after that.
Correct.
Okay. As long as we're clear on that.
It's reverse progression of the human essence.
Right. So humans are defined by their youth, not by their adult selves.
No, there is original sin. And you commit it when you're young. And there's no way to atone.
Right.
You might as well be shamed into oblivion. Yeah.
Yeah, look, honestly, I think Trump is reacting to this well. Because he's just like, It sucks that he died, and then he's just doing his best to pretend John Lewis doesn't exist. Like, he played it up for the optics real fast, and he said, this really sucks, and then he just hasn't been like, by the way, John Lewis was the greatest man to ever live. The man had no faults, and definitely didn't want to destroy the rights of every American he was supposedly fighting for the rights of.
Right.
Oh, let's see what else is in the news.
Should look into what Kamala Harris has been saying recently.
Oh, I'm sure she's gone dark.
Because the impending announcement.
Right. Well, she wouldn't want to say anything to possibly jeopardize that at this point.
I didn't actually really like John Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. John Lewis didn't want me to be able to prosecute people to an excessive degree. Therefore, he was actually terrible. But his gun control stuff, that was really top tier work.
I'm happy to have called him a mentor, a friend, and a confidant.
Okay, here's an interesting article from Reuters. In Portland, some black activists frustrated with white protesters. A small group of black teenage girls carrying megaphones stood in front of the federal courthouse in downtown Portland near midnight on Thursday, facing a largely white band of protesters. That's interesting. I'm done with y'all focusing on all these white folks, said 17-year-old Randy, who asked to be identified only by her first name. This is a Black Lives Matter movement. Holy shit, I'm loving this. And as it happened, Portland had its first night in weeks without tear gas here after state police took over from federal agents guarding a courthouse that has been the focal point of violence between protesters and those agents. For over 2 months, the nightly Black Lives Matter protests have followed a familiar pattern. A peaceful demonstration against racial injustice and police brutality begins at nightfall at the Central Police Precinct. They are more organic than organized, protesters chant. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Black Lives Matter. A microphone is passed around to whoever wants to speak. The scenes feel festive at times, with drum beats and tambourines, and a grill that serves food at all hours.
And a grill.
Yeah.
the blacks, they just wanted the grill, officer. Yeah. They just wanted the grill.
On the Portland streets, we're taking it back wearing a mask because they shoot me with the gas. President Donald Trump at White House news conference on Thursday called the protesters professional agitators, professional anarchists, and said the federal agents deployed there would clean out this beehive of terrorists. Portland has become a prime target of Trump's law and order re-election campaign. But the reality on the ground is as murky as the nightly clouds of tear gas have been. There are no clear leaders or structure to these demonstrations, and as midnight looms, the focus moves to a small band of mainly white people trying to attack the courthouse, throwing fireworks and objects at police and agents over a fence guarding the building. Let's see.
So funny.
Let's see. There are 2 different protests. This is beautiful, said Nigao 22, pointing to the main body of demonstrators at the Central Police Precinct. This is destruction, he said, nodding to those waiting to confront federal agents outside the courthouse. Suburban mothers, veterans, and healthcare workers joined anti-racism demonstrations in early July to oppose the federal intervention and to try to tone down the violence. The black demonstrators initially welcomed the moms and dads who came with leaf blowers to disperse the tear gas, but are now frustrated with the band of midnight provocateurs at the courthouse. Portland is one of the whitest cities in the United States. I'm glad Reuters remembered this. With only 3% of the residents identifying as African American. Though the residents there are overwhelmingly progressive, the city itself is still very segregated. You don't say. A legacy of Oregon's racist past is the only state to ban black people when it was found.
It's a ban black.
I'm so glad that Reuters is finally mentioning how terrible Oregon is.
Oregon, there are no black people allowed.
Look, this is probably news to all the progressives reading this article. Let's be real here.
That's why though. Dude, I wonder how much of the fucking, I don't even know what they're called anymore. Is it all right, or is it just the fucking Nazis? Okay, I wonder how many of the the ethno-nationalists understand that Oregon was founded on ethno-nationalism
Yeah, and it exists as
as
a
a
modern day
literal
ethno
ethno
state.
state. Yeah, as an ethno state. Maybe that's why they want to go so bad.
Yeah, literally the only state to just say it is illegal to be black.
Being black is a crime.
Yeah.
Stop resisting.
We're fighting with our hearts here, Randy said, the black teenager. Okay. Well, we need these white
The
people
black
to.
teenager, okay? Wait,
Well,
what
look.
did you read?
Oh, okay, so I kind of misread it, but it's we're fighting with our hearts here, Randy, the black teenager, told Reuters.
Oh, I see.
Which still. I mean, it's really important that we remember that she is the black teenager here. We need these white people to acknowledge that this isn't a bonfire. This isn't just a party. Holy shit.
I love how. Okay, hold on. So Reuters starts an article explaining how everyone's having a good time and they're grilling.
Yeah.
And then the girl that their article is focused on is like, can y'all stop acting like this is a party?
Yeah. Huddled with Randy and a few other black protesters, Gao looked on disappointedly at the boisterous crowd in front of the courthouse chanting, "Feds go home." "It's about black lives, period," Gao said. "If you really want to respect black lives, and if you really want to respect Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, then you'd be listening to the movement instead of antagonizing police." Based. Gao was pretty based. Now, let's see where they cut that quote short, and he said, "You shouldn't be antagonizing police, you gotta be antagonizing the suburban white folk, although they're the people who are right here antagonizing the police as we speak."
Exactly.
Let's see. New York City won't reopen their schools. Let's see. Holy shit. Here's the official funny story of the week. Belarus suspected men of being Russian mercenaries because they did not drink alcohol.
Wouldn't that be the opposite of a Russian mercenary? That just goes completely counter to the stereotype.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
excuse me, they did not drink vodka, and therefore they are definitely Russian.
Look, it's Belarus, so maybe they were like, look, these people have been in Belarus for like 4 minutes and they haven't had a shot yet, so you know they're not nearly as alcoholic as us. They must be Russian.
Shocking.
But what they didn't know.
Belarus is like the Ireland of
of
the Russia's Britain.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But what they didn't know was the Russians had already been pre-gaming before they came, and that's why they didn't need a shot when they first arrived.
Exactly.
Trump to order China's ByteDance to sell TikTok in U.S.
What?
Yep, so, yeah, so Trump said we might be banning it, or we might force the Chinese company that owns it to sell it.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Dude, we really don't want...
Are we about to nationalize TikTok?
That would be based.
No, it wouldn't. It'd be fucking spooky.
It'd be fucking based.
What if we took TikTok and we made that like the platform for like the U.S. government, what is it? I know they didn't say sell it to us, but I'm just thinking, what if they made it like the free speech forum?
Yes, the public platform for America.
Yeah, the official government-sponsored public platform for, thoughtful debate like twerking and anime girls. I hate TikTok. So fucking much.
Oh no.
That's when it wasn't until a couple of years ago. It wasn't until I think Pokemon Go where I started realizing that like I'm old. Like I'm older than like the current generation. I'm no longer part of the youngest generation.
Right.
Because I had no interest in Pokemon Go. And everyone flipped their shit. And then TikTok became a thing, and I hated it. I feel like an old man that's just like, oh, this music is dag nabbit.
Look, TikTok is this weird thing where like millennials like it, and then whatever the next generation is likes it.
Right.
Because, like, I have coworkers who are like, I love TikTok, and they're like 40. And they have like a 16-year-old daughter, and they're like, we love TikTok together.
What the?
And I'm like, okay, so this
did it just
this just
skip
skips
our
a generation.
Just skipped our generation.
Yeah. And it's like Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat's more popular with our generation, but
I still hate Snapchat.
I do too. It was fun when it first came out, and then they were like, let's make it, more than just sending dick pics with and then immediately deleting themselves, and then it got really boring.
Let's make this girl look like the dog she wants to have relations with.
Well, look, when TikTok first came out, it wasn't that.
No, I'm not talking about TikTok. I'm talking about Snapchat.
Or, yeah, Snapchat. No, Snapchat didn't start with that, though.
I know.
Like, all that shit was added later. I'm talking like you literally just sent a random dick pic, and then it would delete itself. That was all that was there. The glory days of Snapchat.
Yeah, only if you're a degenerate sends dick pics. Look, I have learned from my past that dick pic sending is not the best.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. I have stories, and I'll probably tell those stories in a future podcast, but... Oh, God.
What do we have? Oh, the independent solar systems could have a large number of planets that are home to alien life, study finds. That's wonderful, I guess.
Good to know.
Yeah, I know. What is there anything else interesting happening? Johnson & Johnson sees promising COVID-19 vaccine results after testing on monkeys. That's wonderful. I really hope that we gave the monkey COVID.
Watch it not actually be a monkey. Watch it actually be the Tuskegee Airmen.
Okay.
I'm not trying to say the Tuskegee are monkeys, okay? What I'm trying to say is that we experimented on the Tuskegee fighters.
No, it wasn't the airmen. It was just like random black people from, I think, Louisiana.
Wait, is Tuskegee a city?
No, I think Tuskegee just like refers to them being black.
That's weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird name for black people.
Yeah, look, I always thought it was like the Tuskegee Airmen that we did this to, but no, it was just random black people.
Wow.
I know. It doesn't really make it any better.
No. No, it doesn't make it better at all.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, at least the Tuskegee Airmen, like, signed up for the country. Whereas these guys were just like, hey, we're gonna kill you now, and we're gonna develop a vaccine midway through this trial, and you're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, we didn't care about the results. We just wanted to watch a whole bunch of black people die of syphilis. It's awesome.
So fun. It's fun for the whole family.
Yeah. All right, Alex, I demand that you read this.
Okay. Give me a second.
And then we'll probably end after this one.
So, are you saying we're not going after? We're not going to learn about the beautiful policy positions of Kamala Harris, our future vice president?
No, we'll learn plenty about those from Politico tonight, when they give her full announcement speech, and break it down.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Eat some bread.
This is a fact check, by the way. From Boom.
Okay.
An Indian news site. I'm glad Google News is promoting Indian news sites. They're very reliable.
So what did you send?
It's just a fact check that I think is going to be interesting. Because the question is, was the USA the only country to abolish slavery?
What?
Not really.
Wait, what?
Honestly, I think I think this fact check is going to be too much in favor of the idea that the USA was the only country to ban slavery, because they said not really, as if it was even kind of close. I mean, look, just read the actual meme right at the top. It's fucking great.
You need me to read in a specific accent?
No, just read it.
Okay. Slavery used to be a normal. Slavery used to be a normal throughout the world. America was the only country that ended it. Black people owned slaves too. White people were slaves too. How many of these morons from Black Lives Matter know that? What the fuck?
You know, honestly, there was precisely one person on my Facebook who I could absolutely believe would have shared this.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is she your wife?
No, not my wife. just a very boomer, conspiracy theory minded, I don't know, semi-conservative, I don't even fucking know. So Alex, but before we read this article, should we see if we can debunk this ourselves first?
I mean, the Spanish Empire abolished. The British Empire abolished. I don't know what to tell.
Well, look, honestly, the fact check is again being too generous because they're reading information that's not in the meme. So experts say multiple countries banned the practice of slavery in the 19th century. But no, this meme doesn't say in the 19th century. They said America was the only country that ended it. Ever. There's no time frame here.
Black people owned slaves too, which means something, I guess.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden slavery was justified, I guess. It's actually a good thing.
This is definitely a message about black Marxists who want to abolish police forces.
Yeah.
This debunks the whole thing.
Yes.
Marxism debunked.
Yeah, didn't you know
black
that?
people owned slaves too. Dude, Anthony Johnson was one of the first slave holders in America. Okay, I think everyone knows that black people also own slaves.
Yeah.
Also,
Facebook post shared thousands of times. Wow, thousands? Thousands of people shared this. Oh, 4,000. 4,000 shares. And it's got a fact check. Alright, go ahead and read the fact check.
Okay.
Because I think we've established that, in fact, there are other countries in the world that don't have slavery. And therefore, this is false.
Facebook post shared thousands of times claimed that the United States was the only country to end slavery. This is false. No shit. Look, all I can say is Libya did not abolish slavery.
Dude, the end of the sentence is just great.
Experts say that multiple countries banned the practice in the 19th century, and one historian called the claim absurd.
Only one.
One historian. One man.
Which is arguably more absurd than this claim. So only one historian was like, this is absurd.
I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it, but I just thought it'd be funny to read like one of the other posts on this site.
Oh no.
Just the headline. No. Dr. Anthony Fauci is not married to Ghislaine Maxwell's sister.
What?
Or does this logo on COVID-19 testing trucks show Egyptian god of death?
Oh man.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Slavery used to be a normal throughout the world. America was the only... Okay, no. So that's the post. That's the post. So where's the fact check? Let's see. The claim comes during a national reckoning. It comes in the midst of a reckoning.
Yes.
Over the country's history of slavery and racism after the May 25th death in police custody of African-American George Floyd. His death sparked weeks of protests and increasingly widespread support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Let's see, the U.S. is not unique in having abolished slavery. In fact, many countries, England, Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Chile, France, the Danish West Indies, for example, managed to do so without a civil war and a death toll of 750,000, as happened in the United States.
Now they're just like shitting on us.
Now this is just mean, okay?
Yeah.
A lot of people
hey guys,
died.
the rest of us pulled this off without killing like 1 million of each other. How hard is this?
I feel personally attacked.
Yeah, you know what? We can personally attack back. Because you know who isn't on this list?
What?
India. So fuck you, boomlive.in.
K. Wright Lewis, Associate Professor of History at Howard University, told AFP in an email. Wait, no, so this is not the site. This is K. Wright Lewis.
Oh, yeah, so she's just a bitch. Who is she?
Okay. yeah, look her up.
Dr. K. Wright Lewis completed her PhD in the Department of History at Rutgers University, New Brunswick in 2011. Her research focuses on slavery and abolition, African American intellectual history, Atlantic world history, and the history of violence. Wow, that goes back pretty far.
Let's not act like the Civil War was like the origins of it. We're focused on preservation of the Union, so it's disingenuous to say it took 750,000 American lives to end slavery. No, it took 750,000 American lives to reunite the Union.
Yeah. Because if the Civil War had just started with the North, like, going into the South and, like, freeing a bunch of slaves.
War of aggression.
Well, yeah. Well, that's basically the narrative that the South seems to have, so. So if that had been how the Civil War went, it probably would have been a lot less costly in terms of lives.
Well,
so it just would have been like, but the army, they're freeing my property. And then they would have cried a lot, and a lot less people would have died. But yeah, the South started it to preserve their slavery, and then the North was like, hey, we want the land back.
We want this Union.
Yeah.
You can't
leave.
Stop it.
Yeah.
You can't
like
leave.
we weren't going to take away your slaves. We just weren't going to have any more slaves.
Damn it.
And now we're going to have to take away your slaves as a penalty because you guys just took our land.
You're mean. We want our fucking taxes.
I mean, the real irony is the South would have kept slavery for a lot longer if they just wouldn't have revolted.
I know. That's
all right.
funny.
So we know everything we need to know about this chick. Continue.
Okay. Slavery has been practiced in every nation in some form or other across time, said Wright Lewis, whose research focus includes slavery and abolition. She added that American slavery is distinct because the unprecedented brutality towards indigenous and African enslaved people, that's not even true. What do you mean distinct? Holy shit. What do you mean distinct? Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's basically, yeah.
That's bullshit. That's totally bullshit.
I mean, it's different compared to, like, the ancient Israeli version of slavery or, like, the Roman version of slavery. But, like, history at that moment, it's not that distinct.
It's not that distinct compared to the Egyptian version of slavery.
Oh, yeah. Or
the Arab version of slavery.
Or the Spartan version of slavery.
The fucking castrate. They castrate them.
Like, the different places and times have definitely had very different levels of cruelty towards their slaves. But that doesn't mean that America was, like, unique in all of world history and how cruel it was.
It was uniquely racial.
Yes, that part is unique.
Mostly because we were getting our slaves from one continent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we were also getting a bunch of slaves from Ireland.
Oh, they were indentured servants.
They weren't. I know. They weren't slaves. They were indentured servants, practically slaves. Okay, they're very poor. It was very hard for them to buy themselves out.
Yeah.
But still, it was the uniqueness was the racialism of it, and that was mostly just justification to pillage Africa because there was like a new market interest.
Oh man, it gets worse because that's not even true. The next paragraph.
And on top of that, unprecedented brutality. They only castrated if it was necessary. In the Arab world, every man was castrated.
Yeah.
Every single man. And when I say it was necessary, I mean when they felt it was necessary to castrate someone.
Yeah, there's not actually many reasons to castrate
I'm
someone.
not justifying castration. Holy shit!
Just admit that you
they did a
believe in
lot of things.
castrating slaves, okay?
They cut like the hamstrings of like the runaway slave. They did a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Right, but this is not unique, especially compared to the Arab world. Now, if we want to go way back in time, we look at the Egyptian slave trade. That was fascinating. But
Yeah, no,
in recent
but
history,
just
under the fucking Ottomans.
no. Look, just read into the next paragraph.
Okay. Okay. So she's wrong about that. Anyway, let's see. At the time that slavery began here in America, British Europeans had already determined that slavery was wrong, immoral, and unchristian.
Okay, so the main thing I want to point out here is, by any definition, wherein Britain is ahead of us at the moment slavery started in America, they couldn't actually have been that far ahead of us. Because, I mean, let's just assume that 1619 is when America and slavery begin.
Yes.
For the sake of journalism, of course. It's an opinion piece, but it's journalism now. And we have to teach it in schools. So let's say that in 1619, America begins with slavery, and Britain still has slavery. Okay, so maybe that's the wrong start date. Let's skip forward to 1776. America, the nation, is born. And it has slavery.
The United States.
Yes, the United States is born. And Britain still has slavery. Not for much longer. Britain was about 30 years away from abolishing slavery. But there's no good start date where American slavery can be said to have begun, and Britain was
to be
any
fair,
more
at the
ahead
time,
of us.
there were forces that were trying to abolish it here too.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like for the sake of again, look.
And that's what I'm saying, is if they're trying to say that, like, Britain had already decided that slavery was wrong and people were upset about it. But people were upset about it here. There were plenty of people upset about it here. Just not a significant majority.
Agitation between the North and South was always going to be a thing. Because even at the time of the founding, there were still issues with the like the reason Jefferson removed mentioning slavery and its abhorrence in the Declaration of Independence was specifically to not rile up the South.
Yeah.
Because he wanted the colonies to be united in this.
Right. And
so,
the fact that was originally in there at all. I mean,
and
the American colonists were well aware that Britain still had slavery.
Right.
And was at the time still supporting the transatlantic slave trade. Right. And it's pretty obvious because in the Declaration of Independence, we said, well, originally, it was later edited out because of that, but we said, hey, it's wrong that Britain is endorsing slavery. But then a whole bunch of American colonists were like, hey, we still have slavery too. And if you start saying that that's wrong, we're going to leave.
Right. And they fulfilled that promise, in 1860.
Right. So, like, America and Britain were going through the same debate at about the same time. Britain just got to a conclusive answer, like, 55 years before we did, which, in the grand scheme of things, isn't that long. America had been around for less than 100 years when slavery was abolished. And Britain had slavery for, God, probably several hundred years at that point.
Right.
So, for a country that just, like, formed with slavery, we were really quick to get rid of it. But that doesn't mean we were the first, and we definitely weren't the only country in the world to have ever abolished slavery. But I'd say proportionally we did pretty fucking well. What else do we have? Oh, we have nothing to be proud about here, or there, that it took so many lives and so much violence to end an institution that everyone in the world agreed was wrong. So I guess we also can't be proud of how many men fought and died to end World War II. To fucking kill the Nazis.
Everyone liked war.
Yeah.
But we were the only ones who liked war. Everyone else in the world was just like, war is bad.
Yeah. Well, war is bad, and we're only abolishing slavery peacefully because we hate war so much. And not because they just waited for the political tides to turn just a little bit more in favor of complete abolition.
Right.
Whereas the political tides in America were already turning towards abolition. And the South knew it. That's why they broke off and declared war. Because they knew they were fucked if they stayed. And they had some remote chance if they left. They just didn't realize that if they had stayed, they would have kept their slaves for probably several more decades. Because the political will doesn't change that quickly.
Right.
But by declaring war, we were able to just strip them of all of their political power and then get rid of slavery without them being able to say shit about it.
But by centering the war effort, post 63, on specifically abolition.
Right.
And you actually have a lot of sway during a wartime effort. You have a higher ability to sway the what would you say, like Overton window on the topic.
Right.
Just because it's attached to blood and gore and war.
Well, yeah, and we had to have something to really clearly define us as apart from the South. And so if the South is going to define itself as, hey, we're other Americans who just want to be independent of your America, we didn't really have good definitions. But if we suddenly say, hey, they're the ones who want slavery, and we are the ones who absolutely don't, and that means we can never tolerate it when we take their land back, then that really pushes people towards, yeah, we're the anti-slavery side. We hate slavery. So all the people who were previously neutral or just didn't give a fuck now are suddenly like, hey, well, we're pro-union, therefore we're pro-abolishing slavery. The two concepts were tied directly together.
And arguably, the concept of abolishing slavery was the natural conclusion of the Declaration. Like, America was founded implicitly, covertly, on that eventually this institution would be forced to. That's what Jefferson believed when he was writing the book.
Yeah.
Like, this was an inevitability. And then he worked for the rest of his life to do it.
Right. And plenty more people did at the same time, too. Yeah. And
a lot of those people who worked against slavery had themselves slaves.
Well, yeah, it's just like, who was it, Friedman and Pinochet?
Yeah.
Where Friedman kept getting flack because they were like, hey, why were you, supporting a dictator? And Friedman was like, look, I was just telling the dictator how to run his economy. And I was telling him how to run it in such a way that not only would his people be better off, but they would be so much better off that they would eventually demand the removal of the dictator.
Right.
And it worked in like 20 years.
Yeah, and a multi-century institution that existed was almost wiped out in the founding.
Yeah. But it was just a little too controversial at the time.
Well, yeah, because the founding itself was in essence controversial.
Right.
You only had so much political capital to unite the colonies.
Yeah, the founding was hanging together by a thread, and if we suddenly threw in, the equivalent of making, like, let's say California and Texas have to form a new political union, and they can just barely agree that they want to form this union, and then Texas suddenly says, by the way, mandatory abortion bans with the death penalty for anyone who attempts to get an abortion should be written into our Constitution today.
Right.
That union wouldn't be able to form. That would be too much of an issue, too much of a controversy at the time. That doesn't mean that just because Texas allowed abortion to exist, but they set up clauses in the Constitution that would allow for its eventual removal. That doesn't mean that Texas wanted abortion. It just means that Texas prioritized forming the Union more than it prioritized that one particular issue that was important to them. And it's kind of that with America, is that they just wanted to build the country, and they figured that they could deal with these other issues later, which we did. Oh, let's see. I love how they make sure to mention that Cuba ended slavery in the 19th century. What about Haiti? Did Haiti end slavery in the 19th century? Let's see.
What about Libya? Has Libya ended slavery now? Thanks, Obama. This is legitimately Obama's fault
Let's see.
that Libya currently has slavery. This very minute.
Oh, okay, okay. Alex, read the bottom bit. Black slave owners and white slaves.
Okay.
Because I think that she is just intentionally obscuring the issue now.
Okay, right?
Just the headline: Black slave owners and white slaves. It's like the last third of the article.
Let me see. So, did you send something new?
No, it's that article from Boomin.
Okay, what does it believe? Okay, black owners.
Black slave owners
right
and white
address.
slaves.
The Irish were sent to the Caribbean as punishment and as the losers of the war with the English. But as terrible as they were treated, they were indentured servants, not slaves, Wright Lewis said. There were less than a few hundred African Americans that supposedly owned slaves, Wright Lewis added, but many of their family members were held as slaves to protect them, so the statistics may be ill-informed. What?
Yeah, a lot of black slaves who'd been freed bought their families.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's where a large portion of the black people who owned slaves were. There were some who just like owned them and used them as plantation labor, like white people did, but most black slave owners were just people who bought their families.
Sure.
But no, it's the bit below that. Right below
The
also
African people in Africa also owned slaves. And while it was practiced differently than in America, it was bondage nonetheless, she said. Fauner agreed. Black people, a few of them did own slaves in the U.S., but no person legally defined as white was held as a slave in the U.S. There were white slaves in ancient Rome and the medieval Mediterranean, but the concept of whiteness did not exist then. In colonial United States, there were many white indentured servants, but that is not the same as slavery.
Look, so I think the failure here is that they are comparing American slavery to African slavery, and then comparing American slavery to American slavery. So, like, you know, they bring up that, yes, Africans in Africa owned slaves, but no black person in America owned a white person. Like, okay, but did Africans in Africa own any white people? Because the racial situations there would be reversed. One would be an ethnic minority that would be a lot more likely to be held as a slave.
Sure.
But instead they're like, well, no black Americans owned white people. And, like, I don't think that's a fair comparison they're trying to make. And I don't know, out of the context of this conversation, maybe they didn't think about it when they were deciding this. But, I mean, it almost feels intentional here to just, hey, we're going to compare apples and oranges, but then we're going to compare apples and apples in a minute. And
Right.
we're not going to tell you when we suddenly switch these comparisons. But, all right,
Yeah.
I think that is officially the end of this. We have a wasp nest to deal with now, so see you all next time.
Thanks.